We are going to talk about melodies, and I have to confess that I am a little bit terrified. So, a couple of videos ago, I had a comment from Luca Pandini. I hope I pronounced your name okay, requesting me to do a video on the melodic parts. So, I'm going to try. I'm going to try. Just a little caveat to say that I'm just going to confess that I really don't know what I'm talking about. This is going to be a bit of music theory, but not as in established music theory. It's probably going to be more around things that I've either found or discovered myself. So before we get going, we're just going to talk a little bit about melodic parts in IDM music. Glitch, electronica, whatever you want to call it. It's difficult with these labels, but let's start there. I often find that it's not so much about the choice of notes, although they are important, but there is the combination of notes and timbre is incredibly important. It's not about strong melodies. Usually, there are some exceptions, but let's see if we just talk about classical music for a bit. If you take Clair de Lune, I don't know if you know it, Debussy's Clair de Lune. You have definitely heard it. I put a link in the description, doesn't matter. Classical music, it's a really strong, poignant melody, and it almost doesn't matter what instrument you're playing it on. It's originally a piano, but if you play it on a guitar or a toy piano, or synthesizer or whatever it might be, the melody is really recognizable and it's going to sound more or less quite beautiful. But with a lot of electronic music, you cannot separate the melody that is being played, separating it from the sound itself, the timbre. I've been pondering a lot about this, and I just want to talk about a few examples. So if we take, there are some examples of really strong melodies that you can hum, or that you could play it on a different instrument and you would still recognize it. So there is the classic Squarepusher track from the album Feed Me Weird Things. The track is called the theme from Ernest Borgnine. I think that's how you pronounce it. Put a link in the description so you can hear it. Super strong melody, very recognizable. But then if you take something like the record Sunbox made by the artist Kiln, that is old now. I remember when it came out on Ghostly and heard it, and I just could not pick apart the non-percussive percussive elements in there. The sound of its in its time, the sounds, like, it was not really so much of a melody that you could hum to someone and they recognized it, and you could totally not separate that melody from the sound. And I just didn't understand how one could make anything like that. It didn't sound like a preset on a synthesizer, but it worked somehow. And that album has sort of stayed in the back of my head for that reason for quite a long time. Another example is the artist Monolake. On the record, the album Momentum, there is a track called White_2. I'll put a link in the description for all these tracks if you want to hear them. I don't want to play them in this video because I'm worried I would get a copyright strike. I spoke to a music teacher at Morley College about that melody. It starts off straight from the beginning of the track. It is sort of a hybrid between percussion, but it's definitely got a pitch. And he argued, like, yeah, it's got a pitch. There is a melody there, and that's why it works. But I don't think if you would play that on a piano or a guitar, it would just not work. It requires its context to actually, that's what makes it strong. I also want to argue that that doesn't make the melody less good than something like Clair de Lune. I think it's just a different beast altogether. It's non-percussive. Well, in this case, the Monolake one is actually a bit percussive. Another interesting example of non-percussive parts where, like, how does it work was maybe in 99, 2000, something like that. I was in a sort of medium-sized town in Sweden, visiting a friend. There was a sale on in the local record shop. There was a section with electronic music. It was not a specialist record shop by any standard. You could buy any pop music in there. But browsed through the electronic section and saw a record. I didn't know the artist Pole at the time. I'd never heard of him. But this record cover was just red, saying Pole 2, nothing else on the cover. And I felt like, oh, this is probably going to be something that I like. It looks super minimal and interesting. Took it home, put on the first track called Fahren, German pronunciation. Is it okay? Maybe? Hope so. And initially we were just wondering, like, is this... My friend, is her speakers broken? Was it her hi-fi not right? There's absolutely no bass. But there is this melody, which is very simple, just one note melody at the beginning, which then develops into something that feels super split. There's a super low bass line, which you can arguably hum along to, but the higher pitch melody, or the more like it's got a high pass filter on probably, or a heavy cut on an equalizer or something. It was so simple, but why did it work? Like, why did it work in that context? Just one more example before we get going is something slightly more recent. I wouldn't say it's new. It's probably already 10 years or something. I really don't know. Is the track Birthday by Alphabet's Heaven. What's it called? The album is called Siamese Burn, I think. Again, link in the description. Maybe I should even put together a Spotify list. I'll have a think about that after this video and see what we do. But at least there's going to be some YouTube links or something so you can listen to these tracks if you want to get the reference. The melody, the non-percussive parts there really fascinated me when I heard that track for the first time, because there's so many different instruments playing the melody. It's as if like it's the whole melody is broken apart, and I just could not understand, how do you write something like that? And I've really been struggling with the melodies, and I've been trying to look into how to work it out. And if you just Google strong melody writing, it's like on YouTube, I just didn't find the answers that I was looking for. I couldn't find something that worked in an IDM context. And eventually I stumbled upon something that you may have already stumbled upon. Like a lot of the old Warp Records artists just used the black keys, and that was a bit of a not an epiphany, I suppose, but like there was a change in my melody making process, because prior to that I could write a melody that did not sound wrong, but I could not write a melody that sounded interesting. It didn't have the feeling, and I just didn't know, and I just couldn't separate the sound from the melody, or the timbre from the melody. But that, it's just like, okay, there's something going on there. So if I just stick to the black keys, keep it very basic, all of a sudden there was a big jump in I just started getting melodies that were closer to something that I was looking for. They had more the feeling that I was looking for. And have since realized that I think that is the D sharp minor pentatonic scale. And since then, that is generally the scale I stick to. No, sorry, I just stick to the minor pentatonic scale, not necessarily in D sharp. So in Ableton here, I'm going to move my mouse so you actually can see something moving on the screen for a change. If you go into the MIDI effects and the scale, and you take the where do we have it? The minor pentatonic scale, you're just like going to get that feeling, and you can't press any wrong notes. Also, I think the scale plugin, when I started using this, everything started gluing together much more, like the bass lines, the melody and everything. Like it's just like stick to a scale. That's without knowing much about music theory. Like if you just you can cheat, like yeah, it's cheating, I suppose. Like you will learn this one day. I will learn this one day rather. You pick a scale that you like. I happen to like the minor pentatonic scale. You put that in and you can play, you can just like play lots of different melody lines together and it's never really going to sound wrong, you know, like it's all going to fit nicely together. So it's a fairly recent thing for me that I have more melodic or non-percussive parts, well, melodic parts really. If you look at my Instagram, link in the description again, and look back at a lot of the stuff that I was posting last year, I did that long stint last summer where I did 100 days of 1 minute of music each day. And most of that, and especially the earlier stuff, does not have much melodic content at all. It's more noises, glitches, and percussion. And sometimes, you know, either by accident or by luck, you know, like it was, sometimes I just managed to work to get some melodic content out. So a lot has happened since, but I still find this quite a tricky thing to do. But I'm going to try to share with you some of my process on how to write melodies and also sharing with you how I cheat. So if we just look at this, I've just got an operator in here. I've set this up with a minor and pentatonic scale. I got a MIDI keyboard plugged in. Well, currently I only have an Arturia Microfreak. The rest is packed up in storage. Not the best MIDI keyboard in the world, but it is fine for this. So I don't know even why I said that, because I don't very often play keys by hand. Although I have to say also I've become better at it over the years, but I am nowhere close to calling myself a keyboard player. What I generally use to make melodies are sequencers, and I think this stems very much from working with modular synthesizers. And you do this. Here's where the cheating begins. So there's this step sequencer. I've featured it in loads of my videos. I have to put that before the scale, the minor pentatonic scale. So if we just listen to this now, that's the default sequence. So this sequencer, it's got a few little nifty tricks. So it's got a random button, so you can just keep randomizing a melody. And one of the interesting things it's got the probability here. So it's how likely that note is to play. So you actually get every time this sequencer loops, the 16-step sequencer, you're not going to get exactly the same result each time. The weird thing is that duration is something that you will have to go and randomize manually. Because if you do view all and hit random, for some reason duration just defaults back. I don't know what that is. So let's say that that is a melody that we like. What I would do then is, so obviously this is going to be like, sometimes I actually keep it that way, as mentioned, because the probability, you don't really know. It's going to be slightly different every time. So what you can do, just to get a bit of continuity, so you always, every time you play your track the next time over, that you actually get the same melody playing over and over again. So we have to record the MIDI output of this. So we have to do that on a separate MIDI channel, so that we've got the operator here, we've got the second MIDI channel. So if we do MIDI from operator, and we hit record. And then we can go here and we can just record a few bars, hit record there. What did I just do? Ah. Fine, we got a few bars there. So let's say that we are happy with this. It's perhaps not the next summer hit, but we're making IDM here, and I'm doing as best as I can. Oh, it's actually playing this part. So what we need to do now, we need to take that and we put that on the operator channel, and then it's important that we turn off, if we want to keep the sequencer, just in case we want to record some more variations of this, we have to turn that off, because otherwise the sequencer will override and it will not play that pre-recorded melody. So what we can do now, because I don't think we got a note on the first, so just going to add another note in. All right, so let's make some melodic parts. The next thing I want to talk about is, you probably don't want to have just one melody playing. You maybe want to have a second melody. You maybe want to have a bass line. You may want to have some chords. You maybe want to have some pads. And how do you layer this up? And I have come to a few conclusions, which I don't know if they are right, but they might help you, and they have certainly helped me, is thinking that sounds need to occupy different spaces. So if I would have a secondary melody, I would probably do that at a, it would need to be, I would use a different sound, but it would probably also occupy a separate frequency spectrum. So it might be higher up or lower down, so you don't have conflicting, like hovering around in the same frequency area, because that can make it sound a bit muddy. So if we take, I'm just going to stick to the same sort of instrument. We can just tweak it a bit. I'm just going to, what do I want to do? We can actually just for the sake of argument, we can do a copy of that one. Let's check that one out. Let's solo that for now. And then we have to turn that sequencer on again. And then for this one, we want to have a separate sequence. We can do here, we can go up, so we get that an octave up. And we can just change that sound a bit, so we get a bit of variation. Maybe we can do... So we've got that in a slightly frequency spectrum. The other thing is also thinking about the interval between. So the main melody that we just done was 16th notes. This is currently also 16th notes, but let's say we do this one as 8th notes. So if we play these together now. So let's do the same thing with this one. We can just move this up. So if we like that melody content that we just made, and also we can make this, so this one runs for 4 bars. The original melody, we can just do that and set that to loop, and then we can just do that. So that's actually a 4-bar loop that we run twice. So this melody up here, just to get a bit more variation, we can do that as an 8-bar loop. So again, we have to do that. This one needs to listen to operator 1 and set that to record. And then let's go for it. Can set that. So now the recording will automatically stop when it reaches the end of the this marked area here. Okay, and then we move that up to that channel, and then we mustn't forget to turn off that sequencer. Oh gosh, I've done something weird here with the looping. Let's see what's happened. Okay, let's do that. Command J to cut it there, and then set to loop, and then we do that. That should work. So then the next thing we can do, let's say we want to add some chords. Do we want a bass line first, maybe? Yes, let's do a bass line. So again, let's just keep it simple. We copy that and we turn that on again. So the bass line, shall we try, let's do 16th note. And again, like think about the frequency spectrum. So the bass line obviously needs to be lower. So we turn that sequencers back on again. Should we keep that a bit tighter within that octave there? And then for a bass sound, let's just do a saw wave. We can have a bit of a filter on there. Let's make this a bit, what's the envelope like? No, we don't want short. And a bass line we generally want to have in mono, so we set the voices to 1. I don't know what this is going to sound like. That does not sound like a bass at all. So let's just pull that down an octave. And then we have a little bit of an envelope on the filter. Do we want to do that as maybe, actually we do probability, so these ones we want to have, and the velocity we probably want to keep it steady sort of. Oh gosh, this is the worst sound I've ever made in my whole life. Maybe not, but it doesn't sound very good. Actually, why don't I just go in here and I turn velocity? Shouldn't, oh, we shouldn't affect this. Let's see what that sounds like together. This is not a sound design thing. Stop. Okay, so let's do the same procedure again. Let's make a new MIDI track, and then we do record that, and that is probably just what should we do? We do, actually the first one was 8 bars, isn't it? Like, I don't know. Anyway, we do that half length of the original melody. There we go. Then we got that. No, we don't want to turn that off. We don't turn the sequencer off. Okay, we can check that. Oh. Command J, double click, loop. should we do some chords next? This is going to be the next cheating thing. So let's copy that high pitch melody. Where do we want it? Let's do that at the top. That's what we've done so far. So just solo that. So that's the original melody again. Let's remove that. Then we turn the sequencer on again. Let's find a new sound. Let's do what do we want? Do we want a triangle? That's fine. Maybe do we want to take that an octave down? Let's do that. Then we take this sequencer and then we hit Command G. So we group that. That puts it inside an instrument rack. So if you click this button, you can see all the different chains. And what this allows you to do, you can copy that chain. So now if we randomize that one, we have two sequencers that are different. And we do another one. So we have three sequences that are different. We hit random a few times. So now these three sequences are going to run at the same time with different probability, different, we can do, actually we do some duration on these ones as well. Going to duration, which means that you will actually get chords as these sequences will be running in parallel into this thing. So let's see what that sounds like. And maybe take, do we want to take that down a bit maybe? And these ones, let's make this one really slow. So we just do half notes for all of these. So this is going to run the slowest of all of them. And then we make the decay really long, and then we can maybe have a bit of, oh gosh, that's fine. Do that one. Maybe a high pass filter on that one. Actually, we do, let's add a reverb to that one to set it aside, because I can also think of it as the sounds need to occupy different space. So the frequency spectrum being one space, the rhythmical factor can be another space, that it just doesn't run on the same note division. The other thing you can do is using a reverb or something like that to set it further back in the space or front towards the listener. And obviously you can use panning left and right as well, so depending on where it sits in the stereo spectrum. So for example, bass is traditionally seen as like that should be done in mono. And to me, it sounds better the higher up you go in the frequency spectrum, you can then start spreading out and have more stereo content and panning. But let's add a bit of reverb to this one just to set it apart from the... So should we do the same thing again? Let's do another MIDI track and then we just record these chords in. It's a shame you can't do it in the same track. I suppose it's just because this is not the conventional way of doing it according to Ableton, but that's okay. Actually, I just realized two things. That was that the probability is probably too low. You see, you get some chords in there, but we probably want to have a bit more chord action. So we just like pull the, not the duration, probability. Probability, and we probably want to have that even less often. So we do that, not even half, we do like a, so if we record that again, do I want to have them an octave lower maybe? Try that. Let's go with that. And then again, we turn the sequences off. We turn the whole rack off. We can remove that one. Also, then you can go in and balance all these things depending on. So then you can obviously add lots of effects. It still sounds quite, I mean, it sounds like a nice melody that works well together, but it still sounds a bit static. So if we want to do, there's loads of different techniques. You can obviously do this with like samples, and for every key you press, like it plays it just picks a sample at random. I'm just going to use my usual random map 5 that I'm using in every video. If you sponsor me on Patreon, you will be able to download this. It's nothing that you absolutely need to get by, but every key press, it will randomize different values. So what we can do, just to do with that main melody, let's do that. Oh gosh, what did I do? Go away. There. Map that to the waveform it chooses. So every time it receives a new MIDI note, you can have a look here. And then we can do that. We randomize how much it's sending to the, which channel are we on? It's this one, isn't it? Like how much it's going to send to the second return channel, which is the delay. And then we can do the same with the reverb. Do that with the filter as well. So then you can just like start adding layers, and then you can, of course, like this makes it really easy if you want to make, let's say this goes on for this long now. So let's say there's another section that you want something new to come in, and you just like put this minor pentatonic scale, and you just like find a different instrument to play along with it. So let's say like after this bit, we want the, let's say we want the bass line to continue. So like for this bit, we're gonna be, but we want to find, let's do a clone of that one. We can remove that, and we just find another instrument. Let's move that an octave up. Start the sine wave. Let's do square wave. I'm just going to make some other. We turn the sequencer on again. That could be 32 is probably going to be too fast. It is. Let's do 8th notes. Maybe that can be, I don't know, do we want to have to sweep in maybe? Okay, so let's record that one because I'm just gonna, just for the sake of argument, it becomes really quick and easy to make multiple parts. As you can hear, I'm not spending a huge amount of time on the sound design here, but it's just to talk more about the process, I suppose. Say that there is that part. This may be sounding weird, but let's see. Okay, move that up to there, then we turn the sequencer off. So let's say then we're coming from this bit. Let's just do that so we get a little gap. So it becomes quite easy to make multiple parts, to create multiple parts. In a way, I feel like I realized like to making this video, I got quite a lot of more things that I would like to talk about. So let's crack on, actually. What I'll do, I'll save this project so you can download it. If you sponsor me on Patreon, you will be able to download this project file. We call it TFP. What's the date today? It is the 24th. So we do 2021 06 24 melodic parts PT1. All right. So actually, shall we just we can just actually use this file. It still sounds very, it doesn't really yet sound like any of those examples that we talked about, like the Kiln example or the Monolake example. It's IDM-y type melodies, and then there's different ways you can do to just make it more exotic and gluing it together, and we can talk about a few of those things. One of them being modulating effects. Let's just skip that last part that I added. That was just to say, talk about moving on to different sections of the song. The first thing I would like to talk about, actually, we just stick to this. It's probably easier if I just keep everything in one project file. Just mute different sections. Now that sequencer is really powerful and it's got a random button, you can quickly get interesting results, but it is suffering a little bit from the modular synth problem, which is if you have a traditional step sequencer where it's just like going through the steps, it becomes very even though you can have some probability and it skips a few notes, but it's difficult to get like a bit of a feel. Actually, I'm going to make a new project file. I think it's going to be easiest. So I'll save that. we do a new blank, nice blank file. Let's just pick a, let's do wavetable just for a change. Okay, so obviously you can write your melodies by hand, and if you're really quick at doing that, and especially like if you're struggling with your scales, like go into MIDI effects and just pick the minor pentatonic scales, and it doesn't matter which keys you're pressing on your keyboard. It's going to map it to make sure that it's in that scale. So let's see, if I set that to D sharp, there. Is that only covering black keys? That's not black key, is it? Anyway, set that back to see it's sounding fun. So what I was going to say, yes, if you're really good at, like, in a way, if you just set it to this and you're good at the rhythm, but maybe not playing the keys, you can almost take this and you just hit record and press keys randomly to a rhythm that feels good to you. If that's not your thing, it's not quite my thing. I don't think I'm good enough at it. So I have done something that a lot of modular sequencers can do, but that sequencer that we just looked at, which is free, I'll put your download link in the description because it's part of the big three. I have modified that one. I've talked about it in another video. I'm not going to go into great detail about it. Actually, we can do another sequencer that I've also modified, which is the mono sequencer. No, I think that's unfair. You will be able to get the mono sequencer as well if you sign up. We have the step sequencer version 2. What this one is doing, if I hit play here, obviously that one needs to sit after the sequence. Nothing is going to play. So you think, it's a bit boring. So this one actually requires a trigger to be able to progress. It's not going to automatically progress. On the other one, you saw there was a section here where you could say, is it meant to progress on 16th notes or quarter notes or whatever it might be. This one doesn't have that. It requires a MIDI note to come in. So if I press a key on my keyboard, so as you can see there, I'm pressing the keys on this little Arturia Microfreak, and it puts the sequence forward. So you put the probability all the way up. Just randomize the melody there. So now you can experiment by doing, you can mix quarter notes, eighth notes, whatever you want to do. You can have triplets in there. So you can do, I'm just creating this little sequence here. Let's do some 8 notes, a couple of 8 notes, and then we can do some triplets here at the end. I don't know, that might just sound absolutely crazy, but let's see. Triplets are quite nice after. So as you can see here, I've just literally put the same note in. It doesn't care which note it's playing. It's so long as it's a note. Basically, if it receives a note, it will just tell this sequencer to go with one step forward. So then you can just, and you can still use the probability in here, so you don't necessarily always get a note that's playing. So there you see, like if you do something like this instead, you can get rhythmically more interesting, and you can still use the same technique as we did with the other sequences and obviously combine those techniques with this one, but you can just get something with a slightly more rhythmically interesting result. The other thing you can do when you're using sequencers is it's a bit like the thing with the Alphabet's Heaven track that I mentioned earlier, where it feels like there's just so many different instruments, and you can do a bit like we did in the example I just showed you, where you have something that randomly changes the waveform, for example. But you can do another thing, like, so we say, like, we got this sound here going. We can do, we click that one and we group it. So now we've got an instrument rack here, and then we can do another one. Let's solo that one and we just find another sound. Okay, maybe. And then we can do another one. Let's solo that one and see what we can find. Let's do another way. Okay, so we've got a few different things going on here, and then we can, then in this rack here, just unsolo that. So now they would all play at the same time, but that's not what we want. We want to select them all, click chain, then you get this thing here, and then you can actually spread this across the key. That's the one we want. So now you can see these green lines that go across the entire keyboard. Let's see where we're going. We're between C3 and sort of C5 almost. So if we just change this to, so let's say start just below there, it doesn't matter so much. I just want one of you, I don't want all of you. There we are. Okay, so that one can occupy a certain part of the keyboard, and that one can do that part of the keyboard, that one do the lower part. So now, depending on which key is being pressed, either it's that first version that we had or the second version. So now we should get some different instruments playing depending on which part of the keyboard. That one. Maybe we want to actually transpose that one down. And then obviously now we just got this wavetable thing in, but you can mix something else in. Let's say, why not do a sampler, for example. And the sampler can, no, actually, let's do, we do an operator, and we can do a really low note. So that's always providing a really low sine wave that's going to be across the whole keyboard. So no matter which key you're going to press, you're going to get a version of this. Let's set this to mono. And then we pitch that down a couple of octaves maybe. This doesn't sound anything like Birthday by Alphabet's Heaven, but I suppose when you listen to that track, you get an idea of what sort of thing you could do. And then we can just like put loads of effects on this to make this go crazy. Hopefully that was a bit of an insight into... No, actually, I was about to finish there. Did you hear that? It was almost finishing. It's 48 minutes in. I think if I keep this within an hour, that's fine, isn't it? I was going to talk a bit more about this sequencer. So what other thing I've changed on this now, like that random button on the original sequencer, you cannot MIDI map that. So you have to click that manually with the mouse. Now I got this little MIDI device that I highlighted in my previous video, which you also can get from my Patreon. So TFP trigger. So I'm going to put that on the next MIDI channel. Let's say we do... That works a little bit in the same way as the sequencer, that every time it receives a MIDI note, this gets, so if I just highlight the MIDI there, if I press there, you can see these are getting triggered. You can map these to, like, in a way, to click a button, if you will. So if we do that one, we map that one to, why did I make 3 of them? I don't want to make 3 of them. I just want to map that to the randomize button here. We only needed 1. We didn't need 3 of them. Maybe I was thinking about the chord thing we were doing earlier. So here we do like every bar. that one will get pressed, and therefore every bar this will get randomized again. No, it didn't. Why is that? Boom. I see, it's because that one is not running. There we are. Again, we can do on that channel. Let's do a random map 5 on there, and then we can just get some actually modify the sound palette. So we take let's say we do that one and we change the warp maybe, and then for that one we do the, I don't know how this is going to sound at all, we do the fold maybe, and then we can do the top one. So again, every bar this is going to randomize some values for us, and that can do maybe, I don't know, the filter. Oh, that's very low, so we make sure that the filter can never be quite 0. It's going to be a bit more. Actually, let's do this a bit more rare. Now it's too often, so we just make this sequence a bit longer. Let's set it to there, and then now you can just record lots of different loops with melodies that you can then use. And then we can destroy it with effects. Maybe we can put some, okay, I'm gonna go cheap. Well, it's not cheap really. We can put the glitch machines effects on there. It's oh, that glitch machines. Some of their effects are for free. I've bought some as well, but like, for example, the fracture effect is something that you may want to consider. So therefore we can actually do another trigger here, I think. TFP. I don't know if this is going to work, but let's try TFP trigger. So again, we map that to, let's go into fracture here, and we want to map that to the random functionalities, each bar. Okay, I don't know how successful that was. Anyway, I think that will be enough for today. I hope you found that useful. I really don't know much about music theory at all, but I'll learn and discover all the time. And I hope you found some of that useful, and please do not hesitate to suggest anything else that you're curious about in my music making process. So thank you, Luca Pandini, for suggesting this video. I hope you have a good rest of your day, and don't forget to subscribe and like, and that makes a massive difference. I don't have that many views yet, but if you like what I do, please, that would be super helpful. Just every little helps. And also, if you would consider sponsoring me on Patreon, would be absolutely amazing. Even if you're just interested in grabbing some of the stuff that I'm sharing, I'm trying to release something each week, and you just sign up for a month. That's going to cost you €5 or £4 I don't know what it is in dollars. You just do it for a month and then you leave. Would make me sad, because I hope you want to get some of my future content, but like, every little helps. Much appreciated. Thank you so much for tuning in and watching, and goodbye.